It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the Commander to throw us on a budget on my way to quest out brew the magic world. You know the motto, it's ABB, baby. Always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider doing all that YouTube stuff. I appreciate it. But today, we're continuing our videos this week on the Sonic crew coming to Magic, and today we're talking about Dr. Eggman, a 5-mana Grixis human scientist 3/6 with flying. This is beginning our end step. We're going to draw a card, and we give each of our opponents a villainous choice. They can either pitch a card, or we get to put a construct, robot, or vehicle from our hand onto the battlefield. Villainous choice is a very interesting mechanic, and I think there's not a lot of support for it, but it's a very interesting idea. I think what I like the most about this villainous choice is that the three of these abilities really cover a lot of ground in what we can put down. So vehicles are great, right? There's a lot of really great vehicles in our colors, and we could take advantage of those. Constructs, there's a lot of great constructs, including the Gear Hulk cycles, and we'll talk about those. And then robots, there's a decent amount of robots, including, right, we've already seen some cards from Edge of Eternities that are robots. So there's a lot of support for what we can do. Now, Eggman's ability is not the only way we're going to rely on getting these things in, but it could be a great way to get a free things of these in. And since our opponents have to not by either have to pitch a card or let us do it, we could pay off our opponents pitching cards to make them not want to do it, and then hopefully we can cheat our thing in. I mean, obviously we need to have enough to cheat in, right? I think even if all three opponents chose to let us do it, we may not have that amount of, constructs, robots, and vehicles in our hand. But I think a lot of the times, especially in the early game, people are going to want to pitch that card because they're not going to want to give us the thing. And we need to try to take advantage of that. I think later in the game, they're probably just going to let us take the thing, probably thinking we're not going to have enough. And we'll try to run the gambit on that too. But I want to give a quick thank you to the channel member. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a teeny bit early, check it out down below. Okay, so constructs, robots, vehicles. What's our option? Well, with robots, you have a lot of the Transformers cards that were released with Brothers War. I'm only going to show off 2 in the presentation, but I'm going to be honest, there's a lot more that you could choose from if you really want to. Blitzwing on the front sides at the beginning of our end step, target opponent loses life equal to the life that player lost this turn. If no life was lost this turn, we get to flip it over. Flips into Blitzwing on the backside. A vehicle that's also a creature during our turn. The beginning of combat on your turn, choose flying indestructible, gets that ability. And then whenever it hits a player, you flip it back over. So it can guarantee some damage on its own. Otherwise, it's not a bad creature at all. And I think it could be really, really useful for us. A big one that may look odd because it has a cast ability, but it's pretty great, is Cityscape Leveler. It says when you cast a spell or whenever it attacks, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a tap Power Stone token. I know it may be weird to say I'm willing to put Cityscape Leveler off Eggman's ability, but just remember that's an 8-mana creature I'm cheating in. Whether I lose one of its triggers to destroy a land permanent, it's a great blocker, and then it's going to come back to my turn, and I'm going to be able to use it again, right, to end up knocking out somebody's thing. Well, here's the Gear Hulks. There's a ton of them. We got an original one in each color set, and then we started seeing some in 2 colors. So you see a Combustible Gear Hulk and Noxious Gear Hulk. These were part of the original monocolored ones. Both of them have abilities when they enter. And then we had a couple new ones in Aether Drift. There we see Coalstoke Gear Hulk. Whenever it comes in, put target creature with mana value 4 or less from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control with a finality counter on it. It gets Menace, Death Touch, and Haste. And we get to we have to exile at the beginning of your next end step. This is fun because Eggman's ability is going off at the start of our end step. That means that if we put Coalstoke Gearhulk down, we would steal a creature until basically the end of our next turn, which is kind of fun. But the point about these Gearhulks is they're just big artifact creatures that have great abilities when they come in. Gearhulk can destroy something. The Noxious Gearhulk destroying combustible has an opportunity for some damage. Oil Deep Gearhulk lets us look at the top, look at target player's hand and choose a card from it, and they pitch that card, and then we draw a card. So again, just very interesting options along the board of what Gear Hulks we can play, and I believe we're playing all of them that we can in our colors. Starscream's another interesting one. Whenever we draw a card, if we're the Monarch, target opponent loses 2 life. And whenever one or more creatures deal combat damage to you, we convert Starscream into its backside. It says whenever it hits a player, if there's no monarch, that player becomes the monarch. And whenever we become the monarch, we flip it back over. Monarch's an odd mechanic, but Starscream's just one of those ones that if we can manage to keep monarch, um, we can really take advantage of it, drawing the extra cards off the monarch, and then keeping Starscream dealing damage to our opponents. But we got vehicles, right? Brotherhood Vertibird's a vehicle in the air that grows for each artifact we control. Cyber Ship, whenever it hits a player, puts the top 2 cards of that player's library onto the battlefield face down in our control, and they become 2/2 Cybermen. Notably, they can then crew this, the Cyber Ship to have it continue attacking. Demonic Junker says when it enters, for each player, destroy up to 1 target creature that player controls. If a creature we control is destroyed this way, we put 2 counters on it. So again, interestingly, able to come in and destroy some things. So it's not just about getting big bodies on the battlefield; it's also about destroying things. Nautiloid ship nukes an opponent's graveyard when it comes in, and then whenever we hit a player, we can put a creature from that pile that we got with the ship back onto the battlefield. Reaver Titan deals 5 damage to our opponents every time they attack and has protection from mana value 3 or less, which hopefully should stop a lot of the single target removal that people could use on the Reaver Titan. Rolling Hamsphere, a big 7 mana 4/4 vehicle that gets +++ for each hamster we control. And whenever it attacks, you make 3 hamsters and deal X to any target, where X is the number of hamsters you control. So it just gets bigger and bigger turn over turn, and it's just a lot of fun. The Belligerent, whenever it attacks, gets us a treasure, and we can look at the top card and play it. The Indomitable draws us cards whenever our creatures hit a player. Thunderhawk Gunship can get all of our attacking creatures in the air and then makes a couple Astartes tokens to tap it when it comes in. So you see how this, you see all this value we're going to get from these vehicles and these other things. It's not just about any one of the 3, but we can take advantage of all of them. And since all 3 of those things are primarily artifacts, we can pay off artifacts. Things like Duretti can pay a -2 to sacrifice an artifact to bring a target artifact from our graveyard back to the battlefield. A lot of times this could be sacking something like a treasure or some sort of robot, token or some sort of token and getting a big thing back from our graveyard. Tezzeret Master of the Bridge makes our creatures a little bit cheaper for each artifact we control, and then his +2 just deals X to each opponent, and we gain X, where X is the number of artifacts we control. A really dangerous ability that over the course of the game can get harder for our opponents to deal with. Cryptothrall can just give all of our other artifact creatures hexproof, keeping them hopefully alive and out of harm's way. Golbez lets us surveil 1 whenever an artifact enters. In the beginning of our end step, if we have 4 more artifacts, we can get a creature from our graveyard back to our hand. Then if we control 8 or more artifacts, each opponent loses life equal to that card's power. This is really fun because this can then go off before Eggman, putting a creature from our graveyard back into our hand, right? And then if it's a construct or a robot, we can potentially put it down with his ability, right? Leading to some nice recycling there. Fabricate goes and gets an artifact of our choice and puts it into our hand. Again, good way to set up that Eggman ability. Their Name is Death just destroys all non-artifact creatures. This will hit Eggman, but I don't think we really mind if we really needed to wipe the board. We want to wipe the board. Whir of Invention, kind of similar to Fabricate. The only difference is we have to pay X, where X is the mana value of the artifact we want to go get, and we can also tap artifacts to help pay for it. A very interesting card in Whir of Invention, very useful for us. Almost all of our artifacts are going to be higher up on the mana value scale, so something like Simulacrum Synthesizer feels great. Whenever another artifact with mana value 3 or greater comes in, you get to make a construct that gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Those constructs can be great threats in the late game or nice ways to crew our vehicle in the early game. So I like that and is very useful. Doppler Spy Network makes us a Thopter every turn, nice blocker, or potentially could be used to crew our vehicles. And then whenever one or more artifacts we control hit a player in combat, we get to draw a card. So, we're paying off what we want to help to do eventually to win the game. But I think when it comes to the discard matter side, like we really want to have this here because I think it's easy just to say, oh, well, I'm going to put all my things in my hand and play. And sure, that's fair. But I think there's a certain point where you might have opponents that just want to pitch cards anyway. And what we want to do is try to gamify or take advantage of that. Now, I've got 2 cards here that don't necessarily care about discarding a card specifically. They're actually going to give Eggman another trigger. So the Valyard says if an opponent would face a villainous choice, they face the choice an additional time. So this is going to double up on Eggman's trigger, basically making sure that they have to face that choice twice, hopefully leading to more discard. And then Y'shtola Rule says at the beginning of our end step, we can exile a creature we control and then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. And then if it's the first end step of the turn, we just get another end step. So this is actually just going to give us another Eggman trigger. And since you're just blinking a creature, we can just blink one of the creatures we already have out, probably specifically the Gearhulks, right? They have these great ETB abilities, and we can get value on both ends of Y'shtola's ability going off. Blood Chief's Ascension says at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, we can put a quest counter on it. And then whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, discard, battlefield, library for mill, there's a lot of ways Ascension can go off. If it has 3 more counters on it, that player can lose 2 life. If we do, we gain 2 life. Ascension is something that we can get it set up really quickly. Is going to be really good for us and help us really just hopefully start really chunking some life off of our opponents. Liliana's Caress and Megrim will both have our opponents lose 2 life or dealt 2 damage if they pitch a card. And then Waste Not, depending on what type of card our opponents discard, we get some value, either 2/2 tokens, some mana, or drawing a card. So Waste Not's great because then we can really take advantage of what our opponents are pitching. I mean, it feels bad to get the 2 black mana and not be able to use it, but a drawing a card or a token aren't bad for something that's going to happen anyway. But I've said it before in the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my first shot at Eggman, and I think going into testing, I wasn't sure how much to really build into the vehicles. Like, I think you could really build into the vehicles if you want to, and add something like Chandra. Her her ability can turn one of our vehicles into a creature each combat. She also just adds some great value all throughout. Imposter Mech's a fun vehicle. It comes in as a copy of any creature an opponent controls, except it's a vehicle. I kind of like that idea of that. I just wasn't really sure, where to put the numbers at. And then my thought was something like Machine God's Effigy. So we can have it come in as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact with a tapped add blue mana. This could be fun to like um, copy a key creature we have or an opponents have, but it also adds mana. The main goal is to look for a static ability we really like, or maybe a buff, or something like that, and get an extra copy, and it's a mana dork. I wasn't really sure where to put this in. Like, all 3 of these were cards I really liked the look of. They were just those last 3 I cut that I really wasn't sure what to take out for it, but I think they're things I would really heavily consider going into testing. Are there other vehicles? If I want to go more vehicle heavy, what would we do for it? But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find Magical Christmas Land. It's not just to show off all of our best plays, but it's to just get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand, like, how do we want to set our game up? What are we looking for? Here I've got a 4-lander with 2 mana rocks. This is almost perfect. We're going to be able to get Eggman down nice and early. And then we have Mirror Battlesphere. So we have a construct that we can get down with his ability, which is nice. Well, there is Cityscape Leveler. So there's another thing that we can use to get his ability, or get him in, and then we'll get the talisman in. So we've got just 1 turn before we can get Eggman in here. So I've got 3 mana. Here's anything I want to use it for. Not quite yet. Again, Y'shtola can double up that end step trigger, so that's pretty great. I should have played this summit last turn. I played the summit last turn and then played the vault this turn. He's 5 mana. Why did I think he was 6 mana? Okay, well, we can either way, even if I was the dummy who didn't do that right. So now we go to end step. We're going to draw, and everybody gets the choice. Either pitch a card, or we get a construct, robot, or vehicle. Let's just say on average, somebody's going to do at least 1. I think I want the leveler. If somebody does a second one, then obviously we have the battle sphere. Those are the only 2. But let's just say, for the purpose of this, we'll always end on the downside, just for the purposes of trying to keep this fair on our end, and say that go the 1. I really want the leveler. That way it's a great blocker. And then on our turn, we can start use it to really interacting with our opponents. So now we've got 7 mana. We need to crack the landscape if we need it to be colored. Like the idea of the Golbez can eventually get us there to start getting things back. Duretti can sacrifice artifacts to get things back. We can also pitch cards. Y'shtola could get us a second Eggman trigger. The only thing I worry about is we're going to end up just having more. We're going to end up having not enough in our hand, but that's okay. I think it's still important to cheat the right things in. I'll crack the landscape for the blue, since it seems like we have a couple double blue things in our hand. I kind of like the idea of just Y'shtola, and then go ahead and attack with a leveler, just knock something out. Remember, the Power Stone can only be tapped to cast an artifact or use an artifact's ability. So again, it's not a bad thing, but also not very useful for our opponents. And then we go to end step. Eggman goes off. Again, let's just say someone lets me put the battle sphere down. That makes me 4 mirror tokens. And then Y'shtola goes off, which we're going to do this first. Does it target? Does target. So I have to pick the leveler, unfortunately. So we'll just bounce leveler. I wanted to bounce the battle sphere, right? Because it gets more of a buff for each mirror you control. But again, because the ability targets when we put it on the stack, I have to choose something like Cityscape Leveler. But then we get a second end step, right? Now I can blink the battle sphere and then, draw a card off Eggman. And unfortunately, I have nothing to put down, so not here and there. But now, right, we could potentially make the battle sphere a 10-7. Leveler is still around to attack, and Eggman could have attacked this turn. I didn't really think about that. I was more focused on showing off the ability than I was, the intrinsic things there. But now as we come to turn 6, 8 mana, hold up the counterspell, probably. I don't mind the idea of going to ready and plussing up to pitch, draw 2, and pitch 2. Or is it pitch 2 first? Sorry, it's pitch up to a certain amount and then draw. We'll go 1. And then we saw the caress, which I'm willing to put in. Gonna make our opponents have to pick some worse choices there. And then that's 6 mana, so I've got 2 mana left. Should have enough for the counterspell. Attack with the leveler. The battle sphere, I have no reason not to attack, because remember that Y'shtola is going to end up blinking it. So I'd probably just tap all of my mirror and make it a 10-7, make it attack, have leveler, attack and hit something out. Go to the first end step, blink the battle sphere, and then draw off of Eggman. Again, we don't have anything to put in, but we're going to hopefully net some damage if people choose to discard. And then the second end step, again, blink the battle sphere again, draw a card, and then we would have the Titanic to put in. This is the really important thing now about these mirrors. If we have anything like those constructs or anything that cares about the amount of artifacts we have, like, we're in great shape now with all these mirror tokens sitting around. But RMS Titanic's kind of interesting and can get us a bunch of treasure tokens. And I think, if somebody gets rid of the the leveler or the battle sphere individually, well, we can use Duretti to get them back. If somebody straight wipes the board, it's a little unfortunate, but we can still sacrifice the Titanic to Duretti to get, one or the two of them back. I think we're in good shape here. I mean, the mirror are going to start becoming a problem. We don't necessarily need to tap them to battle sphere. We could just as easily just start attacking with them as a group and really hurting our opponents. We should still have the 2 mana for the counter spell to protect up this turn. And then we could look at something like desynchronization on a future turn. Blinks, it puts all non-land permanents that aren't historic. So remember, historic is artifact, legends, and sagas. So all of my artifacts are safe. Both of my legends are safe. So this is hopefully just going to be a one-sided mass bounce for us. And I think we're just, off to the races on that one. Let's get into playtest number 2 here. Keeping a 4-lander with Thunderhawk Gunship. There's the Spy Network and Waste Not. So this isn't bad. We're missing 1 mana for Eggman. And we've got some nice things to play as we go up our way. So I think we just focus on getting the Waste Knot down. I don't imagine the Waste Knot's going to do very much for us on our way up. But hey, you never know. Not much to do there. We can leave up the Vandal. I guess we have the Vandal Blast, but I don't really see that probably happening here. Thopter Spy Network's my thought. Get it in. We're not going to be able to get a Thopter from it just quite yet, but we might eventually. Now, with 5 mana, I think we do Eggman, right? End step, draw a card. Let's say one person does it. I'd rather put the gunship in, get the Astartes token, and get myself ready for the gunship to attack. Now this turn, we're going to make a Thopter, right? Because of Thopter Spy Network. There's my no maximum hand size, so that's great. I don't have to worry about it. I've got 4 artifacts, so the Thoughtcast is just 1 mana. Might as well do that to draw a couple cards, seek my hand a little bit. Still got 5 mana left. I probably want to keep things like the Belligerent and Chief of Foundry in my hand. Chief of the Foundry, although, for example, might not be a bad play here, just because it can buff all the rest of my artifacts, right? Because now that Thopter can crew the gunship, and then the gunship, these Astartes the gunship and the Astartes and Eggman can attack. I just realized that the Foundry doesn't actually buff Eggman or the Astartes, but okay, that is what it is. But you still get in the air, so it's still good damage. On the end step, we draw a card. Or sorry, Gunship would draw us a card because of the Spy Network. On our end step, we draw a card. We try to put something like the Titanic or the Belligerent in. Maybe we luck out and get multiple, but I guess it would come down to that. And then on our next turn, right, we just need to find a way to continue to crew our things, which we get another Thopter. So now we should be able to crew the gunship. We just need to find a way to crew the Titanic if we want to do that. Padim can protect our artifacts a little bit. Megrim probably makes sense. Maybe like 4 mana for Padim. One Thopter crews the gunship. Eggman crews the Titanic if we want the treasure. Otherwise, just crew the gunship with the Thopter that came in this turn. Take some big attacks. Then on our end step, right, probably put the Belligerent down. Right. Otherwise, we're just in good shape. The Padim is giving our artifacts hexproof, so a lot of these are going to be safe from removal. Otherwise, the Belligerent, right, great. Go start making us treasures, letting us play off the top. The Titanic can give us some treasures so we can get some mana. And I think we're just overall in good shape on that one. But let me know, what do you think of Dr. Eggman down in the comment section below? I think Eggman's a really fun deck. I think it's got a cool idea. I'm not entirely sure what it's going to position it's going to have in the long run. Like, do people go for this over other Grixis artifact commanders? Because like I could definitely see something like Mishra from the Brothers War decks probably just being up there in people's minds. I think you're going to have the people that wanted to play the Gearhulks in a fun deck like this, and so that's going to see some play. If you're more interested in the vehicles, I'd probably recommend you look at maybe something like Edward Kenway instead. That's going to care more about the vehicles and give you more profit. But I think Eggman's a ton of fun. I think it's a very interesting commander, and I think it's probably going to see some play with just the number of the free things it puts together: constructs, robots, and vehicles. There's a lot of those, especially recently, and constructs being the Gearhulks, robots being the Transformers cards, and then looks like we're getting some of them in Edge of Eternities, and then vehicles having so many great options. I mean, I can't see why this wouldn't see play. So I'd love to know what you think, and I will catch you on the next one.